symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
What's going on, everybody? This is Chris Hero, and welcome to a very special edition of Can Chris Hero Save Wrestling? Shout out to Conrad. This week, we do not have a full-on episode, but I thought, let's do a little something special. I had this concept in mind for a while, and this is a great week to try it out and see what you guys think. Starting at some point in 2019, I would post these tweets with the hashtag Ask Wrestling Genius. These I would usually be at an airport, in an airplane, sitting somewhere where I knew that I was going to have a couple hours to myself. And I just put this out there as kind of like a Q&A. You know, I am not opposed to answering questions here and there on Twitter, but I just thought, you know what, let's go ahead and consolidate it into one little request. And when I say Ask Wrestling Genius, the types of questions that I would answer are questions that are not Chris Hero specific. It doesn't have to be about my career. Doesn't have to be, anything focused on me. These are just either my opinions on certain things, certain aspects of wrestling history, or just weird little technique questions and just this little trivia that self-professed wrestling nerds such as myself really get a kick out of. So I would post these and say, hey, send me your questions, whether it's about Japanese wrestling, British wrestling, any type of wrestling history or any type of technique or any style. Send me your questions. And I was doing a little research to figure out how many times I'd done this. I'd sent out 4 of these in 2019 and 2020, and I had gotten back over 800 questions. So during these times, obviously I didn't answer 800 questions, but I did pick a number of them to give my thoughts on. And I always think this is a really fun way to interact with people. And this also forces me to do a little research and back up this whole Wrestling Genius thing. So what we are doing today is I have dug back into these previous Ask Wrestling Geniuses, and I have cherry picked some of my favorite questions, and I am going to answer them verbally instead of having to adhere to a 280 character limit via Twitter. And I just thought this would be a fun little thing to do as a bit of a shorter show and a bit of a potpourri, if you will, of various thoughts and details when it pertains to professional wrestling. So without further ado, let's get into my first question. Hassan Mula, I believe is how you pronounce that, Hassan. You will have to message me and correct me. Hassan Mula has asked, why do you think that lucha wrestlers or luchadors have longevity and their peak continues to their 50s? Guys like Atlantis, Negro Casas, Virus, or El Santo. That is a very good question. If you look at the technique of lucha libre, you will see a lot of tumbling, a lot of rolling, and I am not 100% certain because I was not there when lucha libre was created, but I believe the rings that they had to use back then were incredibly stiff. Like concrete stiff. So these guys developed a style where they could break their falls more easily, and they could have an exciting, compelling matchup with these different maneuvers and takedowns and arm drags and head scissors, etc. But you were not wrecking your body by taking these flat back bumps or flip bumps or whatever. Of course, now in Lucha Libre, you'll see a little bit of everything. But I think that style and the repetition of those roles and just these aspects of tumbling are very conducive to having a long career. I have done quite a bit of Lucha Libre training throughout my career. I spent 3 to 4 years, I would say, training with Jorge Skyde Rivera, who was Ultimo Dragon's head coach at his Torreon gym in Mexico. Skyde came to the United States in 2003, I believe, for the first time, and did some training camps. And then before you know it, he is moved up to Pennsylvania and living in my living room on a futon in the corner. So I get to spend a lot of time with Jorge, and more importantly, I get to spend a lot of time in the ring with him, just learning these different techniques. And it is not just the tumbling. They also put a great emphasis on neck strength. You know that through Japanese wrestling. That's a little bit more obvious, those guys with their crazy bridges. But I learned all these different neck strengthening techniques, and just out of this world stuff that I would do in my seminars when guys would come to train with me. And these, they're just like, you want me to do what? You want me to try what? And you're just grabbing the bottom rope and rolling yourself onto the top of your head with your feet straight in the air. Just really cool things that are not impossible to do, but if you know the technique, it's awesome to do these things to strengthen your neck. Strengthening your neck is vital in pro wrestling because of how often we land on our backs. And that keeps our head tucked so that we don't boom, ricochet, and our head bounces off the mat. That sucks. That is one of the worst things in pro wrestling, when you have some crazy fall and you misjudge it a little bit, or you have a little bit too much momentum and you just crack your skull. So the conditioning of these luchadors, including neck strength and tumbling, and then just also their style. There aren't a ton of bumps. It looks like there are a ton of bumps, but when I say bump, I mean landing flat on the mat and your momentum stopping there. I don't mean some type of a head scissor that rolls and your momentum carries you over into like a 3/4 roll, or you slide yourself out of the ring. And also these guys put a lot of emphasis on their core strength. So you look at the classic luchadors like El Dandy or Super Porky, Brazo de Plata, Villanos. And these guys were like stout, and these guys were, just very stocky, and they may not have that American bodybuilder look with all the rippling abs, but you can just see how strong these guys are. Two of what I believe are the best bases in pro wrestling now. You have Penta, over for AEW, and you have this guy named Black Taurus, who is a fucking minotaur. Like, Mantar was cool. This guy is way cooler. Right? This guy is incredible. And he is the type of guy that just can base for anyone safely and in a spectacular way. Now, these two guys are not super muscled up guys that you would expect to be so strong, but they're both incredibly strong. So Hassan Mullah, I would say it has to do with their conditioning. It has to do with their style. And then, of course, just a little bit of good luck. Thank you for your question. All right. We zoom on over here to Fenrir_6. I don't know what that means. But this lovely individual over here says, just a random thought that I have sometimes. Don't you think that wrestling would be less predictable if wrestlers didn't have a finishing move, but could end a match with any move? So I think that finishing maneuvers are just some of the most fun parts of wrestling. The era that I grew up in, you have Jake Roberts' DDT, you have the $1 Million Dream, you have Macho Man's elbow drop, Hogan's leg drop, the Gorilla Press splash from Warrior, or you have leg lock. You have these moves, Great Muta's moonsault, these moves that are just kind of ingrained in the fiber of that performer. It's attached to them. It's not just who they are. It's you see them and think of them, and you can think back to the move that they do. So I do think it is essential for people to have moves that are their specialties, right? I'm not sure if you're a basketball fan, but there was a Hall of Fame basketball player for the Houston Rockets named Hakeem Olajuwon, and he has a move called the Dream Shake, where he would pivot and fake one way, and he would just float around and just hit this beautiful shot. And to this day, it is still called the Dream Shake, right? Of course, he didn't hit it every single time, but it is a move that is just forever tied with Olajuwon. You know, he does these camps with these big men and works with them, and they try to get this move down. There's a guy named Steve Smith who has this little hesitation dribble that he calls this, that other people call the Smitty. Just a fun little move here. You've got the Steve Nash where he dribbles under the hoop and comes back out. And, you know, he was the guy to really popularize that style of ball handling. These things just add a little extra depth to the performer or the athlete in this case. So I think it's important to have finishing moves. However, it is imperative that we add credibility to things other than the person's number one kill move, right? I absolutely adore the idea of a pro wrestling match having the ability to end at any point during the match, you know, the beginning, the middle, the end, whatever, even on unexpected things that where the crowd may fall flat, because it is the process of educating the fans. When is the last time you saw a match or matches consistently ending with sunset flips, right? It just, everybody goes to the damn schoolboy. I don't know why they do the damn schoolboy. I don't know if it's producers saying that or if it's the talent. It's just such an easy, simple thing to do. And I love a good schoolboy or schoolgirl maneuver to pin in a match. But there are so many awesome pins in wrestling, right? Why is it the schoolboy? You know, I guess just because of how easy it is. And it's something you've done a million times. You don't have to put any thought into it. But something like a sunset flip in the 80s, you would see that move end matches, you know, not all the time, but you would see it in the heat of a match. But then you would also see it in a big comeback where a guy comes flying over the ropes and it's a sunset flip and 1, 2, 3. Maybe it's more of a house show finish than a TV finish, but people believed that that could feasibly end a match. There are just so many things that we do nowadays when we are trying to get a false finish reaction, but what we're doing is not congruent with that. So I think it is, the impetus is on the talent who are putting their matches together, the producers who are producing the matches, and the bookers who are booking the matches, to get together and say, hey man, let's have these matches end at different parts in the match. And the first couple months are going to be rough because some people are going to be disappointed with these matches, but it is okay for fans to occasionally be disappointed as long as they are satisfied overall. You know, there may be match number 3 on the card that was not what they hoped it would be, but you send them home with a great main event. There you go. And now that little Easter egg is planted in their head that, oh my gosh, he won with you know, he won with a sleeper hold. That's kind of weird. The other thing I want to touch on here is the two elements that I find work best. The two elements that I find that work best when you are putting together false finishes is anticipation and surprise, right? Anticipation is, you know, the guy in the corner stomping his foot, you know, letting people know that a super kick's coming. Anticipation is Macho Man standing on the top rope. He throws his arms up, you know, here, you know, an elbow is coming, or a double axe handle, depending on the position of the opponent, right? That is anticipation, right? The surprise is when you lunge in for that super kick and you get caught with an ace crusher, or you get caught with a super kick of the opponent. Like, so that is the balance. Sometimes it is more satisfying to set up a move and hit it. And then sometimes it is more satisfying to surprise the audience with whatever that move is. You can't do too much of either of them, because if it's always setting up, always hitting, it can just get kind of boring. You need some surprise in there. You need some spontaneity, right? Now, on the other side of that, if you're always trying to do some sort of a surprise move, it just ends up looking like counter, 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 counter. And it can either go over your audience's head, or it can just ultimately not be as satisfying. It's trial and error. We want to go out there. We want to have the best match possible. We want the crowd to be as excited and satisfied as possible. But there's no blueprint on how to do that 99 times out of 99, right? You need to play around with things. So just be conscious of that when you're putting your false finishes together, the balance between surprise and anticipation. Thank you very much for your question. All right. This is a pretty simple one here. Ian Nadeau, Smarknado is his @ name. That's kind of funny. He wants to know my preference on a 10 or a 20 count when it comes to the count out rule in a match. I prefer a 10 count for television, just because it eats up less time and it keeps the match going a little bit quicker, a little bit easier. I like a 20 count for live events. And also for your big pay-per-views or your big matches. I like the drama that is built up by, I just think of the Japanese main events with All Japan or Pro Wrestling Noah, when it's big move on the floor, one guy's able to roll in, and then it's like 15, 16, 17. Like, you can feel the tension from the audience there through the screen. I love that. I think that's also great in a live event type situation, where you don't have to worry about keeping the attention of a television audience. I think that these counts should be consistent. I super dislike it when it's like, 1 through 5 is counted pretty regularly, and then the poor referee always gets screwed over, right? He sees that his wrestlers are out there and they are not paying attention whatsoever. So then it's like 6, 7. Yeah, that is tough. So I like consistency. It's okay. It's up to the referee's discretion to when to start the count. And I think it's also up to the referee's discretion to, like, oh my God, this is a main event match. Last thing we want for this audience is for these guys to get counted out. So let me go out there and wrangle these guys and get them back in the ring. I think that's okay once in a while. All right. Easy question. Our next question here is from @StarDamaged. Best escape from a hold you ever saw? So, in answering this question, I don't have a specific answer, but I have a broader answer. I'm going to guess it was the year 2000. Wow, that's like the old Conan O'Brien skit. Anyway, the year 2000, I was traveling through Pittsburgh, and I was watching some Japanese wrestling on VHS tapes in my friend Shirley Doe's basement. He used to get all these tapes from Jeff Lynch, and he would have everything from, All Japan, New Japan to Osaka Pro, DDT, the first 01 shows. And he just had a lot of stuff that I had not seen. And there was a gentleman over touring for Michinoku Pro named James Mason. a fabulous wrestler from the UK, who actually works part-time, I guess, as a coach and producer for NXT UK. James Mason, incredible wrestler. So he was doing these interesting counters, reversals, and just the way he moved around the ring, I thought was very unique. And my friend Sam was like, dude, if you think this guy is crazy, check this out. And he popped in this Michinoku Pro tape from 1996 called These Days. And it was kind of put over at the time as Dynamite Kid's farewell. He wrestled in a 6-man tag in the main event. But this show featured a match between a young Michinoku guy named Hoshikawa, and he was taking on a British wrestling legend by the name of Johnny Saint. And this was the first Johnny Saint match I had ever seen, and my mind was fucking blown. This style is referred to by a lot of the guys as escapology, right? Which ties into the whole, best escape from a hold I've ever seen. If you think back to famous magicians such as Houdini would tie himself up or chain himself up and lock himself together and jump in a big vat of water, and he'd find a way to unlock everything, and he would dive out before he would drown, right? Well, Johnny Saint was the Houdini of the mat because there wasn't a hold he could not get out of. And the ways that he would do this is he would do kind of sleight of hand where he would draw your attention one way with his hand, and as you look over that way, he counters out the opposite way. It's more like kind of like a chess match, if you will, where it is, obviously you could just punch a guy in the face. You can do that anytime in a pro wrestling match. But this is a game of one-upsmanship between these guys, like Johnny Saint, Johnny Kidd, Steve Gray, Jim Breaks, Zoltan Boschik. These guys just... Mike Jordan is another great opponent of Johnny Saint's. These guys would just kind of one-up each other back and forth. And I'm going to put my foot here, and as you grab my foot, I'm going to use that to counter out. I'm going to put my leg over, etc. Or I'm going to grab this, I'm going to do this, and it's going to make you move in a certain way. I manipulate your body, and now you're tied up into a pin that you can't kick out of. So seeing this style of wrestling changed my career, because at that moment I was like, man, I need to find every match of this guy ever. I knew that he was an older gentleman at the time. And I was befuddled. How have I never heard of this guy? I thought I knew shit about wrestling in 2000. Here we are 21 years later, and I still don't know as much as I want to know. I could not find any tapes of Johnny Saint. It was so difficult. You'd see a match here or there, those matches he did in Michinoku, or some very grainy footage from World of Sport. But I believe it was Ultramantis in the very first Chikara show handed me a videotape and said, hey man, watch this. And it was like an 8-match compilation. And it just... Yeah, it sounds silly to say, but it changed my career, because I started to try to learn these maneuvers, these counters, these techniques. I tried to come up with techniques of my own that were similar. And then later that year, I would actually go down to Atlanta and learn a lot of these techniques firsthand from Dave Taylor, Finley, and Regal. And this is a story I will give you a full rundown on at some point. But I did have the privilege to meet Johnny Saint in 2006. And it was just, it was a career moment for me to spend time with him. He had been out of wrestling for 6 years at that time. He had no interest in getting back into wrestling. And there you go. 2 years later, he hops back in. He starts taking some bookings. I get to have a match with Johnny Saint. 2017, he moves over to the United States. I get to spend time with him at the Performance Center, go on road trips with him, spend time in the ring with him. And then when I had my run at NXT UK, he was obviously there and just what a great guy. What an incredible performer. If you have never seen a Johnny Saint match, um, pull up some on YouTube. Watch a couple. If those are too long for you, just put his name into Twitter. You could pull up some GIFs, pull up some video clips, because he was just incredible. And my mind was blown when I first saw him on video cassette. Get ready to take you home here with question number 5, my 5th and final question of today. And I like this one. This is from @Kyle, not Guile. I don't know if he gets mistaken for Guile from Street Fighter. That's very possible. It's wonderful of him to differentiate and let us know that he is in fact Kyle. What is the best explanation you've heard for why a Russian leg sweep hurts the receiver more than the giver? And that is like the job of a commentator, to kind of explain these things. But with the direction that wrestling has gone in, there is not as much talk about the actual wrestling in the ring. And that disappoints me. You have some people like Excalibur, obviously, who is doing his damnedest to educate the masses on what's going on in the ring and giving it a little bit of context and perspective. But there are a number of wrestling moves that if you just showed to a casual fan or a non-fan even, they would not understand, hey, why is that guy hurt, but that guy isn't? Moves like just a regular suplex or a neck breaker or, like an STO or a flatliner. Those moves look very similar, like a rock bottom. Somebody will do like a jumping flatliner and it kind of looks like they take a rock bottom. That is up to the individual's execution of the move and how they sell and how they register the move. But it's also up to the commentators to kind of explain what's going on. When I think Russian leg sweep, I think of Brad Armstrong. He used to grab that thing, never try to give him a backdrop, never shoot Brad Armstrong off and try to give him a back body drop, because he is just going to swoop in, grab you around the chin and snap you back. What a beautiful maneuver. I'm disappointed that the Russian leg sweep has gone in the direction of it's not used as often. It's not done as crisply or as violently. It's just a great move. So what I'm going to say to you, Kyle, first you're going to clamp the wrist, right? And then you're going to reach behind your opponent. You're going to grab him around the chin and grab him around the head. And then you're going to bend forward to get a little bit of momentum. And then you're just whipping him back and yanking him on his neck. There is always a difference in someone landing, knowing that they're going to land, and then having no control over yourself and just being taken backwards and smacking on the mat. Yes, of course, the density of the ring does not change for the two individuals, right? But if I know that I'm pulling this guy backward, I can adjust my weight so that I don't land as hard. And I can also tuck my chin to kind of soften the blow, if you will. But if someone has a hold of my throat and I'm already a little bit woozy, a little bit on Dream Street, and they just assert their will, assert their dominance, and just slam me back, I mean, that's going to hurt. And I'm not being facetious either. Like there are moves that you do where you're not trying to physically hurt the person, because in pro wrestling, obviously we don't want to kill the other guy. But it just, you just have a softer landing when you're in control. When you're out of control, that shit is going to hurt. You don't have the ability to defend yourself. So I would like you or anybody listening to this to go back and pop in a Brad Armstrong match. He's got a match with Muda. I like, he always worked well with Arn Anderson. Man, he just He was awesome. Unheralded. I'm not going to say underrated because I think a lot of people know how good Brad was. But man, just go give it a little bit of a glimpse. Thus concludes our first little episode of hashtag Ask Wrestling Genius. I will be going further into these questions that I've posted before. I don't expect you all to have read every single tweet that I've posted. So I'm going to do you the favor of going through my tweets myself and picking out some of the questions that I've liked and that I've enjoyed answering. In the future, I will also put out a request for more Wrestling Genius questions because I really love doing these. I love talking about wrestling. I love talking about all this interesting, just these quirky little details. So my plan is to insert these randomly into a regular podcast week where you will get a full episode of Can Chris Hero Save Wrestling, but you'll also get a little bonus Ask Wrestling Genius video. That is my plan for now. So I'm really excited to hear what you guys think of this. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, let's take this one home with a little bit of word of wisdom here. I was told this. I don't think I was told this until I got to FCW the first time. That would be in early 2012. Know the difference between being over and getting over, right? And what I mean by that is there are certain crowds that you perform in front of where they are familiar with you. They've been watching you for years. So you could, they know what you do. They know what you're about, right? They're going to react to you in a certain way. But at the same time, you may work a Friday show in front of that hometown crowd that you've worked in front of for years. You may be going to a new, a different territory on that Saturday and working in front of a crowd that, some of them know you from Twitter, but you don't have that same connection with that crowd. So if you go out there and try to have the same match in front of crowd B that you did in front of crowd A, it is going to be more difficult because they are not as clued in on who you are, what you're about, what you do. So you have to adjust your performance slightly. There are just certain ways that, for instance, if you are over and your finish is over, people know what your finish is, right? They anticipate it. They know that it can come out of nowhere, etc. They know what strategy you have throughout the match that you're trying to hit this move. You can do a lot more surprising things and dip and dodge and dive out of this. But if you're working in front of a different audience that is not as familiar with you, you run the risk of losing them. And you don't want to do that. I'm sure we have all been through situations where you do some kind of high risk maneuver and you and your opponent just crash to the mat. And then you're just kind of like waiting for that applause. You're waiting for that roar. And it just, it starts off low and tapers off from there. Right. That's not a good feeling. And that is not something we should be risking our physical health for. So just be a little more thoughtful. When you have your matches, are you in the process of getting over or are you already over? This also goes for moves. If you're busting out a new move, you've got to do it in a way that is that people will understand afterwards, like, oh, that's his new move, boom, whatever. I see a lot of people that have a new finish and it gets countered 3 times and then they don't end up hitting it. That doesn't get a move over, right? That is something you can do in a match where the fans are already familiar with you. They're already bought in. They already know what this move is. You can, like I said, you can dip and dive out of it. But in this situation, it's not over. So it sucks. Sometimes we have to dumb things down because we are just putting out a product that is just, it's not connecting the way we want it to. So that's my long-winded suggestion there. Know the difference between being over and getting over, and wrestle accordingly. And our final little bit, I'm going to add a little music here because this seems to be pretty popular. I keep getting tweets about various songs and recommendations. What I would like to say is I do have a Spotify playlist under the name hashtag Hip Hop Thursday. It's a thing I've been doing on Twitter since, oh my gosh, probably 2009, 2010. Not consistently, but I've put together this playlist on Spotify. You can look it up. And, I have tons of songs on there. So a lot of these songs of the week you'll see on there. My song of the week is a song by Kendrick Lamar. This is off of his mixtape Section 80, and the name of the song is High Power. That's high, H-I-I-I, like 3 eyes, right? High Power. I love the beat. I love the lyrics. I feel like a broken record because I'm going to say this about every song that I am recommending to you all, but this is just early Kendrick Lamar. I believe this came out in 2012. This was before Good Kid, Mad City. I highly recommend this whole Section 80 mixtape, by the way. If you like this High Power song, go ahead and check that out as well. He is my favorite artist, I would say, of the last 10 years. I've seen him in concert twice, and I've seen him in concert 3 times, actually. Pardon. I saw him on the Yeezus tour in Tampa. I also saw him at a small club in I believe it was Ybor City in Tampa with Ab-Soul. And then I got to see him at a Staples Center show the same night as an NXT live event. I finished the show and walked right across the street and got to see the last 45 minutes of a Kendrick Lamar concert. And that was incredible. So highly recommend Kendrick Lamar, highly recommend this mixtape. But for now, just check out the song High Power. Thank you. And I'll talk to you all next week.